Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you. We're about to, today, right now, we're launching a new series. November, we're using gratitude, obviously, as our theme, and we'll be exploring different aspects of it. Today, I'm calling my message, The Great Unfolding. I'm talking about how, have you ever noticed that life does not always go according to your plans? Am I the only one? I mean, I'm pretty good with the affirmations and the affirmative prayer and the vision boards, and it doesn't always look like that. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. But first, no actual religions were harmed in the making of this joke. Tim's dog died. His beloved Snuffles. I mean, he loved this dog. And Tim was not a religious person, but he did feel such a spiritual connection to his dog that he wanted to do a ceremony. And so he had grown up Catholic, and so he went to the Catholic church in his neighborhood, and he met Father Brian, and he told him what was going on and what his intention was, and Father Brian was so compassionate. He said, "Tim, I really feel your pain, and I'm so sorry for your loss, but I can't do a funeral mass for a dog. I'm sorry." And then Tim said, "I understand. Do you know of a church where I might be able to do a service?" And Father Brian said, "Well, you might go down to Unity Church. That's the sort of thing they might do." And Tim thanked him, and he was leaving his office, and he said, "By the way, Father, do you think $5,000 would be a good donation for a service?" And Father Brian said, "Tim, my son, why didn't you tell me Snuffles was Catholic?" That's pretty good, right? So we have many people in our church here at Unity who are still practicing Catholics. So I don't mean in any way to disrespect. I want to remind us that we've gotten so sensitive. We get offended so easily. And when we're talking about our pledge campaign, let's be light about it. You all know that we need money to pay the bills, and so let's have a direct conversation. Let's hold it lightly. And we know that our differences are there, and we can laugh about it, because really, I mean, if we can't laugh, it's over. I mean, the game over. We have got to be able to bring back a little bit more lightness into our lives, even in this time. So really, that has nothing to do with my talk. I just want to tell you that. So what are we talking about today? I better look at my notes so I make sure that I know what I'm about. It's been a week, hasn't it? I tell you what. So I said today our message is called The Great Unfolding. There are 3 points I want to make today. The first is that we are people of possibility. That's our teaching. It doesn't matter what your life looks like today. We believe in a greater possibility for you. Then I want to talk about what we do when it doesn't go according to plan, that we can trust the process. And then thirdly, I want to remind us that everything works together for our good. And I mean that. Everything works together for our good. I love to teach in stories, and I wanted to share one of my favorite of the great ancient stories, but it's 14 chapters in the book of Genesis, and I thought, I can't do it. It's just, I should be doing like a 2-month series on it, but I'm gonna give you highlights of the story of Joseph, if you don't mind. Joseph was one of the sons of Jacob. He had 12 sons, and Joseph was the favorite. He was a person of possibility, and his father knew it. Everyone knew it. There was just something special about this young man. His dad had given him the beautiful coat of many colors. We've heard that story, to show his favorite, son a little extra special treatment. Well, the other 11 brothers, you can imagine. But Joseph was gifted, and he would have dreams of great knowing, and he would share them. Dreams like, yes, I dreamed that the sun and the moon bowed to me, and all the 12 stars in the sky, and I think that represents my family all bowing to me. Well, that's not fun for the family, but he would tell these things. There was another one about the sheaves of wheat that would... So He was a person of possibility, a person of promise, a person of destiny. He knew he was destined for great things. So you would think, if you know that, if you're spiritually called and you're gifted, okay, great, straight shot right into fulfillment of the promise and destiny, right? Have you ever read a story? It doesn't ever work that way. Never. I took a creative writing class in high school, and this has stayed with me all these many years, that if you want to write a good story, here's what you need. You need to find your main character, a hero or a heroine, who is likable and knowable and noble and yet not perfect. And then once you have your character, you know who they are and what they're about, then you give them a purpose, a quest, a goal. And then the next thing you do is you throw them in a hole and you throw rocks at them. Metaphorically. That's what stories are about. So I don't know what your calling is. I don't know what your purpose is. Well, actually, I do. Your purpose is to be you fully. As Rumi says, to discover and deliver the authentic self. That's the goal. That's the purpose. That's why we're here. And it's not about a job, although it may show up as job. It's not about a career, although you may be giving your gift in career and maybe not. But your purpose is to discover and deliver the gift of who you are in your life into the world, because the world needs you now. That's why we're here. I mean, I think a lot of us were like, this is the time my soul elected to come into the world? Really? This feels very interesting. But yes, that this is the time that your soul is needed. And the things that you are struggling with, your soul lessons, that's exactly right. So that brings us to the second point, is that when it doesn't go according to plan. I mentioned throwing the main character in the hole. This literally was what happened to Joseph. His dad had sent him out into the fields where his older brothers were watching the flocks, and they saw him coming, and they said, "Here comes that dreamer. Let's kill him." And thankfully, I mean, these stories, well, all the old stories, they're a little bloodier than is to our taste today. But again, metaphorically, metaphysically, let's look at it that way. But the brother Reuben said, maybe we don't have to go quite that far. Maybe we can just pretend to kill him. So that's what they did. They threw him in a cistern. They took the coat and they tore it and made it look like he had been attacked by an animal. They sold him into slavery, and they went back to their father, Jacob, and they said, "We are so sorry. This is what happened to your most favorite son." Did not go so well for Joseph. The next thing that happens is Joseph is taken into Egypt, and he has a series of difficult things. He's a slave in the house of Potiphar, and I really can't tell the whole story, but it's so good. There's so many great things. That there's the passage that it says that every time when it's described one of these passages about Joseph being in a difficult place and rising, it says the Lord was with him. And what we know in unity in our metaphysical teachings is that God is always present. The creative energy of the universe, the love of life itself is always around us and within us. And so when we say Joseph, that the Lord was with Joseph, what it means is that Joseph was attuned to the frequency of his authentic being. And so he was in the power of the indwelling Christ. God within. God was with him. And he kept rising into prominent places. He was gifted. So Potiphar had put him in charge of his whole household. But there's a passage, and Joseph Hurst and I have laughed about this one. I'm going to actually read it to you from the Bible because it's kind of interesting. Yes, where is it? You probably have it memorized, don't you, Joey? Oh, yeah, here it is. This is verse 6 of chapter 39 of Genesis. Now Joseph was well built and handsome. Do I need to give you the metaphysics of that, or you figured it out? And his boss had a wife who noticed that he was well built and handsome. But Joseph knew who he was, and it would have not been fitting for his soul to step outside of his integrity. And so he rebuffed the advances. She didn't give up. There's probably a lot of, Me Too movement stuff going on right there too. We would talk about that. But today, let's just say that she blamed him for an indiscretion, and then the husband, the head of the household of Potiphar, was so enraged, he threw him into prison. And when he was there in prison, Joseph, again, what the scripture says, the Lord was with him. Again, Joseph was still attuned to a higher level of reality, despite his conditions. Despite his conditions. And so there were some of the king's servants in there that had dreams, and they were very troubling, and Joseph had a gift of dream interpretation. And those interpretations turned out to be correct. So one of the servants was restored into Pharaoh's service. Years went by while Joseph languished in prison, although he didn't. He became the head of the prison. He became the one who ran the prison, that something in him continued to rise in excellence wherever he was, whatever the situation. But then Pharaoh had a very disturbing dream, and none of Pharaoh's seers could interpret it. And the servant remembered, the cupbearer, I believe, remembered what had happened to him in prison years ago. And he said, I know a guy who's got some gifts. So Joseph was brought out of prison before Pharaoh, and he interpreted the dream and said, there is a great time of famine coming, and what you need to do is prepare. There will be years of plenty. And if you are wise, you will do this, and you will save your nation. And there must have been something about that attunement that Joseph had with his purpose and his being, because Pharaoh believed him. And he was put in charge of this process, this project of storing up the overflow in the years of plenty for the years of lack that were coming. So, what else do I want to tell you about that part? I'm telling you, we could spend so long in this story. Yeah. Adversity doesn't create character, it reveals it. Do you hear me? The difficult things that you're going to face in your life, they don't make you better, but they give you an opportunity to be your best. And many people don't accept the challenge. They don't step into the possibility of the adversity. They take it as defeat. And I'm here to tell you that each one of us within the sound of my voice today has a 100% success rate at overcoming the obstacles of life. You wouldn't be here otherwise. So why is it when we're in a new one, we think, oh my God, this is it. It's over now. Whereas instead, we should be feeling into these opportunities, into these obstacles as opportunities to reveal the truth of who we are in God. This is an opportunity for me to dig deeper and to reveal more of my authentic nature, my true character. This is the time for which I am created. And this is what the Joseph story tells us. That at every time he was in the most horrible of circumstances, he didn't give in and become defeated. He rose because he knew who he was. And he knew that he was there on purpose. And that somehow God would use him even here, even in the prison, even in slavery. He knew that he could be used for some great thing. And because of his willingness, every time a new door would open, and he would become more successful and renowned. But that's the benefit, the side hustle that he was on. The real thing is that he became more useful to God's people at every step. There's an old Chinese story of a farmer who had a prize stallion. And that this stallion they used to plow the fields and was just a wonderful horse. It gave their family such a sense of security and well-being. Well, the stallion ran away, and a neighbor came over and said, "Oh, that's such terrible news that you lost your prized, beloved horse." And the farmer said, "Maybe so, maybe not. Time will tell. Well, in a few days, the stallion came back and had found a group of wild mares and brought them onto the farm. And the neighbors saw this blessing and came over and said, "Oh my goodness, what a wonderful thing that has happened for you. Now you have 7 horses where before you had 1. That is such a lucky thing for you." And the farmer said, "Maybe yes, maybe no. Time will tell." Soon the farmer's son was seeking to break one of the mares so they could ride it, and he was thrown from the mare's back and he broke his leg. And the neighbor came by to say, "Oh, I'm so sorry for your terrible misfortune, that your beloved son was injured in this accident. This is a terrible thing." And the farmer responded, "Maybe yes, maybe no. Time will show us." Soon the imperial army came marching through the land, and they were conscripting the young men into service. And because the farmer's son had not healed from his injury, he was spared and was able to remain at home. The neighbor saw this and came over and said, "What a joyful, wonderful thing this is." And the farmer said, "Maybe yes, maybe no. Time will tell." I first heard this story in a 12-step meeting, and it was exactly what I needed to hear at the moment, because I was going through a lot of struggles, and it was all so important, and it was just so terrible. And I couldn't see more than about this far in front of my own face. And what this story gave me was a little bit of space. That maybe what I'm experiencing right now is not the end of the story. Maybe this is not even a chapter. Maybe this is just a paragraph that I'm going through. And maybe good will come from it. We have been going through such a difficult time as a nation. I know I'm not the only one who's been grieved by the division that we have faced in this nation. I mean, deep grief that I'm experiencing. And I've been on the verge of thinking, well, maybe it's just we're at the end, the beginning of the end or the end of the beginning, I don't know. This week when I was watching the news a lot, I never knew. Did you know that we would know the Secretary of State for Nevada, Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Georgia? Did you know we would learn those people's names? I didn't know that. One of the historians was talking about where we are as a nation and saying it's pretty bad. He said, "Did you know that when George Washington died, he believed that the American experiment had failed? That when Thomas Jefferson died, he believed that this nation would not survive because of the deep division and the depth of the problems that we were facing 200 years ago." And yet, it was not the end of the story. And I believe that we are not yet at the end of our story. I think God has a purpose for America. And I believe that each of us is a part of that, and that's why we're here. Shall I get back to Joseph yet? Yeah, we can go to Joseph now. Joseph rose to be the second most powerful man in the ancient kingdom of Egypt. He oversaw the economy. The years of famine came, and the people in Egypt had stores of grain and food, and they were safe. Jacob and his family were starving. But word had spread that there was food to be had in Egypt. So Jacob gathered his 11 sons and said, "Why are you just looking at each other? You need to be saving our family. Go down to Egypt and do what you can to find food for us." And so the brothers went to Egypt, and they were brought before the second in command to the Pharaoh, their brother Joseph. They did not recognize him. The last they had seen him was when they had thrown him into a pit and sold him into slavery as a young man. And here he is, this elevated, I imagine he had a costume or a hat or something. He looked different. They didn't know who it was, but he knew them. You know, we just had an election, and we're going to have a new president, and I'm aware that there are some who are not quite done with the otherizing. Have you seen it? That there are some calls for forgiveness and unity and other calls like, not so fast. I have imagined that Joseph would have been in one of those places where they're coming to him and he's like, not so fast. I know what happened. So the story says that he ended up doing a little trick on them. I'm not sure why he wanted to see it. He had a cup planted in their stores. They were leaving. He had then found them. They found it. They arrested them, brought them back into prison, sent the youngest son, Benjamin, to go get the father in the household and come. It all worked out okay. The brothers are brought to Joseph's chamber again. He looks at these men who had wronged him, so absolutely had done wrong by him. But you see, Joseph had changed, and he hadn't changed. He was still that noble person of purpose and possibility. But the adversity had taught him things about what matters and what doesn't matter. The obstacles that God had brought him through had softened him in many ways. His arrogance had been beaten down, perhaps, just a little bit by slavery and imprisonment. That he had walked with the highest of the high and the lowest of the low, and I think maybe he began to understand that people are people. And he had learned through his gifts, he was able to do so much good, save countless lives. And so as he's standing here face to face with his brothers, he has a choice. Will I seek my revenge, or will I be true to who I am and who God has called me to be? There's a verse in Romans, one of my favorite chapters. You know, I talk about, I'm going to say too about the Bible thing. Anyone in leadership, whether it be in a church, all of your ministers here will tell you this, or anywhere, in your office or in the government, leaders, the number one occupational hazard is the projection of other people. I just want to share with you a story. My first month of being senior minister, over 3 years ago, I had two 30-plus year members of our church have a conversation with me. The first one said, Michael, you're doing a great job, but you're not doing enough Bible. Howard used to do so much more Bible. You really need to bring more Bible into your lessons. 2 days later, 30-year member of Unity of Houston says, Michael, you're doing a really wonderful job, but why are you doing all this Bible? Howard used to never do Bible like that. True story. I am not making this up. When we're judging our leaders, I'm just going to ask that we check ourselves. That maybe we're putting some of our own stuff on somebody else. This is Romans 12, 17 through 19. Repay no one evil for evil. Have regard for good things in the sight of all men. If it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. And that is a reference to a passage in Deuteronomy, an earlier time, both in human evolution and in the history of the Jewish people, when God used to smite and smote. That God would strike down people. I don't think God ever smote anybody. But that is the way that the story of the Hebrew people was revealed and the way that they came to understand divine power. But there's spiritual truth in it, this idea of vengeance is mine. Jesus offers the teachings of this in A Course in Miracle. He says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, is easily reinterpreted if you remember that ideas increase only by being shared. The statement emphasizes that vengeance cannot be shared. Give it therefore to the Holy Spirit, who will undo it in you, because it does not belong in your mind, which is part of God. The need to seek revenge is not really a part of you. It's not who you are. The need to see other people, oh, here's the way spiritual people do it. Well, karma will do its due. That's the way spiritual people make room for revenge in their own minds. What goes around comes around. I'm just saying. You know, the Germans have a word, Schadenfreude. You know this word? Germans have so many great words. It's the joy in seeing another one's misery. Oh, you're laughing, but you've done it. We all have. It's a human thing, but it's not who we are. It's not really who we are. It's not our authentic self. It's not our highest self to take pleasure in another's misery. But Joseph has this opportunity. He has all the power now. Those big brothers who had, they beat him up. You know that they played tricks on him. And sold him into slavery and wanted to kill him. But he had a hard time with these older brothers. And now he is the second most powerful man in the land. And they are utterly in the palm of his hand to do whatever he wishes. And what does he do? He reveals himself. They are terribly afraid because they know what they've done. And at that time, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth was the way people operated, that it was right and righteous to do to you what was done unto me. But it was not the truth of Joseph's being. And he forgave. This is one of my favorite Bible verses as well. And I know if I've crossed the Bible threshold for you today, I'm sorry. This is Genesis chapter 50, verse 20. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. You were planning evil against me, but God intended it for good. Before we start rushing out and blaming and meting out punishment for people in our own families who disagree with us politically or in our church, we've suffered in this community by this political division and the anger in the conversation. We have suffered. I'm not going to go into it, but it's been hurtful on all sides. It's not who we are. You are a person of promise and possibility. And what you are being asked to do, what I am being asked to do, is to rise above our hurt and to rise above our anger and our opposition and remember the truth that God is alive in every person. And many have forgotten it. And if you get the opportunity to remind them in a loving way, but most of the time we don't. So the work that we are to do is to see the truth where they cannot see it. Many of us have forgotten who we were. Many of us still do. This is from Hafiz, the great Sufi poet. One day the sun admitted, I am just a shadow. I wish I could show you the infinite incandescence that has cast my brilliant image. I wish I could show you, when you are lonely and in darkness, the astonishing light of your own being. If no one has told you today that they love you, I love you. If no one has told you today they see you, I see you. God bless you. Thank you. Didn't know it was going to be one of those messages today. Wednesday is Veterans Day. Each day in our church we honor Memorial Day for those who have died in service to our country. We honor Armed Services Day, those who are giving of their time and ability right now in service to our country, and then we also honor Veterans Day. Now, normally we have a lot more people than the 100 or 130 that we have here, and so it's always a joy to have all of our veterans rise. So those of you who are watching online, just know if you are a veteran, we are giving you our love and appreciation. And if we do have any veterans in the house today, would you stand just so we can honor you and say thank you for your service. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Our veterans did not serve for Republicans or for Democrats. They served for the people of the United States of America and for the ideals of America, of equality, justice, and freedom. Thank you. Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.